Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Good Friday. Blessings to you. This is Dr. Lorenzo Neal, pastor of New Bethel AME Church. I'm not in the sanctuary today. I am at the house, and I just wanted to bring a few words of encouragement on this Good Friday service. This Good Friday, not Good Friday service, but this Good Friday. Um, First, we give honor and praise to God the Father for allowing us to see another day's journey, and we're grateful for that. We understand that there are so many people who did not make it. Here in Mississippi, we are seeing deaths daily because of the COVID virus, but we are still celebrating. God is in control, and God is still worthy to be praised. Usually on Good Friday, myself and many others would be joining in proclaiming the 7 last sayings of Jesus on the cross. And there are many virtual 7 last words of Jesus on the cross events happening. And I wish we could be doing one physically, because I really enjoy hearing my brothers and sisters in the gospel proclaim these sayings every year. So it's a wonderful event. I'm not going to do 7 last sayings, but I want to focus on the events that happened on the day that Jesus was crucified. If you go to the gospel account in Matthew chapter 27, you find the events of the crucifixion. You find where Jesus is mocked by the soldiers. You find where he is mocked by the crowds. And they even say in verse 37 of chapter 27, they put a crown of thorns, they put a plaque on his cross that read, Jesus, King of the Jews. And they went on to mock him. And after they were mocking him for a while, and he was taking this abuse, he said, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. And they said what he was saying in that language, people were thinking that he was calling on Elijah. And he wasn't calling on Elijah. He was asking God, why have you forsaken me? And even though he was in that moment of travail, and he was in that moment of agony, he had an awareness of his purpose, but he also had an anxiety while he was experiencing that. And we cannot forget the anxiety, the agony that he endured on this day. Well, on Good Friday, what we acknowledge as Good Friday, what he experienced in that moment, the shame of being crucified as a common criminal, when the very judicial system, one of the leaders said, I don't find any fault in this man. And yet he still suffered. At Psalm 22, where Jesus was quoting from, he draws on the pain of the author in Psalm 22, who is saying, look at me, they're sneering at me, they're doing all of this to me, but yet I believe you will not leave me in the midst of my suffering. And the crowd goes forward and said, look, he trusted in God that he would deliver him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in the Lord. How much more are we seeing this in today's world, where people are searching and waiting for God to send this great rain of deliverance to people who are being affected by this pandemic. And even in the midst of this crucifying time, we find a hope in Jesus, who looked beyond his circumstances, and even as he was taking his last breath, still committed himself to the Lord. So I just wanted to take this time, just a short moment, because if I was in a Good Friday service, I only have about 7 minutes to preach. and I just want to take these few minutes to empower you and liberate you in this moment, to know that while we're acknowledging the crucifixion, the painful crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth for our redemption, while we acknowledge that surely he bore our griefs and carried our sorrows, surely he has borne our griefs. While we're acknowledging all of that, we're also acknowledging that he did not stay where he was. He endured the shame of the cross. He endured it for us. He took on the curse of the cross for us. He did all of those things for us, liberating us from all of the consequences of that. I know y'all hear my little dude in there. he took on all of the burdens, all of the reproach, all of that he bore. That's what we acknowledge today. We don't acknowledge the fact that he was belittled and that he was sneered. We acknowledge the fact that he endured all of that. That he had opportunity. Even one of the persons who was being crucified with him looked at him and said, "You didn't do anything. And if you have the power, you should be able to get all of us free. Set all of us free, not just yourself." And the one on his right said, "Look, we know he didn't do anything. But when you get to your space, when you get to your redeeming spot, remember me." And Jesus remembers us in this moment, in this pandemic, in the excessiveness of the anxiety that people are experiencing. Jesus is looking at us and saying, today, even in this moment, you are with us. We are with him. We are with him because he suffered like us. We are with him because he had the same anxiety and angst as we had in the garden and carrying. We are with him as he carried a cross, burdened by it, and he couldn't even have the strength to carry it himself. And a man had to come and help him carry that his own burden. We are with him in the midst of all the estrangement because his own people left him, his disciples left him, his most trusted one, his most trusted disciple denied him. We are with him and he is with us in the midst of all that we are experiencing. That's why this Passion Day, this Good Friday should be more meaningful than any. While we are sheltering in place and while we are trying to do all we can to prevent the curve of this pandemic, we must remind ourselves that we are no different from what Christ was experiencing, and that Christ himself has said to us, take up our cross, crucify ourselves. Now that's the hardest part to do. But when we look in the text and we hear those last words of Christ, from saying, Father, forgive them, to saying, I thirst, to saying, it is finished. In all of that, we find a hope. We find a sense of engaging the Lord. So I just want to encourage you as you go about this day and you think about the great sacrifice Jesus of Nazareth did on this, what we observe today. We're not just observing it because it's a holiday. We're not just observing it because it's part of our liturgical calendar. We're not just observing it because of that. It's a reality. It's a greater reality. Now, and I refer to a friend of mine who wrote a post back in March, and I used her quote on my radio show on Wednesday. And the quote was saying, now we all are in the same boat. We all must hunker in. We all must bear the brunt of the cross, the crucifixion. We can't skip over Friday. We can't skip over going from the chief priest to Pontius Pilate to Herod and back to Pontius Pilate, eventually to having people say crucified. We can't skip over that. We have to experience that to see the resurrection. So, beloved, as you go through this day, whatever you may be experiencing, know that you're not experiencing it alone. I encourage you to read Psalm 22. I encourage you to read all the accounts in the gospel of Jesus' crucifixion, to remind you that while you're experiencing this moment, you may not be experiencing any negative emotions. You may not be experiencing any kind of anxiety, but there's somebody is. There's someone who is, and you can be empowering to them today. You can engage them in this moment, and you can reassure them in this moment. God will deliver you. It may not be the deliverance you desire. It may be in the form of a death, maybe not a physical death, but whatever it may be, the Lord will resurrect you and bring you back. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Again, this was just to be a little word of motivation for Good Friday. I pray that you all have a wonderful week, wonderful Friday, wonderful weekend. It's time for me to go get me some crawfish. That's my ritual. Good Friday, I get me some crawfish. You guys have a great day. Blessings to you.